Hello and welcome to another video in the Learning to Program with Go series. And today we're going to be covering printf and sprintf at the end. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's say I want to print out these values here in a print line statement. Typically, people who first start out in a language use print line in whatever language it is. In C#, it's console.writeLine. In Java, it's system.out.println. And over here in Go, it's fmt and print line. And we could pass in whatever string into this as an argument here. And so let's say I want to say my favorite team is, and then leave that space, do some string concatenation here. So we're going to say that fav team is going to be the next word, and that one of their wide receivers has a really fast 40-yard dash, and their fastest wide receiver runs and then we can go ahead and do a concatenation here again, fastest time, and then we could keep on going, writing more and more. But I'll stop there because we're already running into an issue, and it's that we can't just concatenate into this some float value, and that's an issue. We can't cast this to a string or anything. We're stuck with that we have some sort of issue. And if we continue to, let's say that we had converted this value into a string and we'd still need to add in the championship value and any other subsequent variables, you can already see that this is not scaling very well. This print line statement is already on character 110. So to fix this, or at least make this a little bit more of a succinct way of putting all of this, we can use printf. Let's start with the basics of just trying to get a simple string printed to the console. We can go ahead and use the classic hello world example here. So we'll have a message variable that's set equal to hello world with a exclamation point at the end, and we want to print this out. So instead of using print line, we can go ahead and call printf, and this f at the end really just stands for like formatted, like we're going to print a formatted string. And the arguments that this takes is a string, and then any number of arguments after that can be put back into the first argument string. And now that sounds a little complicated when I just say it in words like this, but let's give a little bit more of an example here. So the first argument is the string to be basically printed out. We're just trying to print this hello world right here. Now, instead of throwing in message directly in here, we can say that I want to print some sort of string. We don't know what the string contains, but a string is going to go here. And so we can use the %s format specifier. And so after this, we can go ahead and pass in the argument of what that value is going to be, or what string is going to go into that %s. And all we have to do is just put in message. So if I save, go down here, and let's go ahead and run this, even though we're not doing numeric operations anymore, we'll get the hello world string printed out to the console. But you'll run into a little bit of an issue if you need to continuously print things. So if I want to copy this, we're just going to copy paste this. You would think, if you're only used to the print line function, that these are going to print on two separate lines, but that's not the case. Run this, and we see that hello world is printed back to back. Now, when you do a print line statement, for instance, let's go ahead and put one right here, the print line, and pass in the message here. Print line is different from printf in the sense that it is appending a new line character at the end of your string that you've passed in, hence why the ln is here at the end. So if we want to mimic this behavior using printf, all we have to do is just add in a new line character right here with the \n. It's called an escape sequence, and it's just saying I'm wanting some sort of new line character to be put here at the end of the string. So let's see this in action. We're going to have a print line statement here where it's going to print the message, then go to the new line. Then we're going to have the same exact thing happen here with the printf statement. So the message gets printed, new line character again, and then we'll have just the plain old message printed out with no new line at the end. Clear the console and run this again, and we'll see that we got hello world printed 3 times, just as expected and what we needed. Now, what if we wanted to print one of these strings with double quotes around it? Well, it's pretty simple, and all we need to do, instead of doing a %s, all we have to do is %q, and I memorize this just by %q quotes. It all kind of makes sense. So if I do another go run here, we get the hello world with quotes surrounding that string. Let's go into printing integers. Let's go ahead and create a num variable here, and it's going to hold the number, let's go with 255. I think this will be a good example here. So the number is set to 255. Go infers that this value is some sort of integer, and we want to print it to the console. what we're going to pass in here is %d to represent that we want to print a decimal value. And when I say decimal, I mean in our base 10 way of thinking, where we have the values 1 through 10 and not in like some binary sense. So if I do a %d here, we have to also pass in the num. Go ahead, save, run this, and we get 255 printed to the console. Now, what would have been helpful in my last video when I was trying to explain a little bit about binary is that we can go ahead and print the binary value of this number using %b. So just do %b, save and run this, and we get a whole bunch of ones. Now, if you're just doing %b a whole bunch and you're not really paying attention, you might just think that this is just a really large number with only ones in it. But no, this is just the binary representation of 255. If we wanted to prove this, we could go ahead and turn this to 254, and what will happen is that this last bit here gets turned to a 0. So now that it's saved, go ahead and run this, and we get all ones, and then last bit has been flipped. Next, I'll quickly show you how to print out a bool. I've done that in a previous video, so it should be fairly quick. So we'll just go ahead and create a variable called v. I don't like the naming of that variable, but let's just set it to true. If we wanted to print this out to the console, all you have to do is just pass in %t, which will print either the value of true or false based off of the variable that you sent in there. So save, this should print out true, and we get true out to the console. And let's just make sure that this works. We get false here, run this one more time, and false is printed to the console. Now let's move on to a little bit more of a complicated format specifier, and it's only complicated because we can do so many different things with it, and that is going to be the float format specifier. So let's go back and let's rename this variable to pi, and pi's numbers are like 3.141592. I think I could have that completely backwards or something, but everyone knows that at least it's 3.14, right? And we need to print this to the console. Since this is called a float, then you can presume that the format specifier will be %f, and we just need to pass this in. So if I pass in pi here, let's run this, and we get the number 3.14 printed to the console. Now the %f modifier or format specifier, whatever you want to call it, can take a couple of arguments, you could say, and then we can have a plus or a minus here. So I'll do plus minus, even though that's not representative, it's a plus or a minus. And then we can have an x value, then separate it with a period, then have a y value, and then the f can go there. And actually it can be a capital F too, it doesn't matter, but we'll just go with the lowercase f. So let's explain each of these, and let's start with the x first. So if I add an x here, or not necessarily an x, but some number, let's go with 10, this gives the minimum width that we are going to print out here for this number. So let's save this and go ahead and do a go run. You can see that we got pushed out just a little bit here, and so that if we go to count each character, so 1, 2, and then you keep counting, we got a width of 10 printed out here. Additionally, we can go ahead and integrate this y value, so do a period. We could do, let's go with 3. The y value specifies how precise the decimal portion of this float will be. So I say I want it to be a precision of 3. So let's count. We go 1, 2, 3, and so 3.142 will get printed to the console here because it will round up because of this 5. Let's go ahead and confirm that real quick by saving and running this. And here we got the 3.142 printed to the console with the 10 format specifier. Now we can go ahead and use the plus or minus right here to determine how far left or right that the width should be for this number. So let's go ahead and type out some extra string right here, save this, and we'll see that when we have the plus here and we do a go run, it right aligns the float value. And if we change this to a minus, save and run this, you can see that it left aligns the float value and that we actually have some extra space here between the float and the string that comes after it. Lastly, you can go ahead and quickly print a variable's type by using %t. So let's remove some of this and call in %t here instead. Now, since this is inferred right here, this should be a float 64, I would presume. So clear the console, let's run this, and we get float 64. I could change this to a string. So let's just wrap it in quotes here, save it, change this, and we get a string now. This works with structs and other types, so you can use this for virtually anything. Lastly, if you don't want to memorize all those different format specifiers, all you need to do is just use %v. Now, this only applies if you're just trying to print out like a simple integer or a float or a string. You can just rapidly put in %v and it'll go ahead and print out the value for you. So we go ahead and save, we run this now, and we get the 3.14 value printed out to the console. Again, let's just make sure that this is all working nice and fine. We take out the quotes, run this one more time, and we still get that 3.14. It just prints out the pure value of what this variable is. One last thing that I have to cover here is Printf. When I originally was learning Go, I thought, oh, okay, we can have formatted strings printed to the console, but how can I format a string and just put it in a variable? Like, I don't want it printed yet. Well, just use the sprintf function. Let's say that we want to assign to some string. So I'll say I have a message and it's equal to fmt.Sprintf, and it's very similar to how printf works. So I can say I is equal to, and then what's the format specifier for this? It's %f, but just to keep it simple, I'm going to use %v, and then make sure to add in that new line at the end. And then we have to add in what this %v is going to be. So we just pass in pi, and if we save, it's all fine, but we still get the red squiggly. That message is just not being used yet. So let's go ahead and use this in just a print line statement now, that we can use it in a print line statement. So I'll just pass in message, just as if we were doing the whole entire hello world way back in the very first video. So save, run, and we get pi is equal to 3.14. Now there's a whole lot more to format specifiers and how they work with structs recursively and all that other good stuff, but I'll leave that up to the viewer to do that research. But I'll go ahead and drop a link down in the description of the format packages documentation straight from Go themselves. Let's go back to the original problem where I had that super long convoluted print line statement trying to print stuff about my favorite team. So here I have my variables. My favorite team is the Detroit Lions. Their fastest wide receiver isn't confirmed, but I'm just going to guess like a 4.29 40-yard dash, and that they're going to win a championship hopefully sometime in the near future. So let's put all these values into a simple printf statement now. I can say my favorite, or we'll just go with my fave team, is we do a %s, and their fastest wide receiver runs a %f 40. They will win a champion. Yep. And then we can print out the Boolean value with %t, and then make sure to end this off with a % or a /n. Now, yes, this is a very long string. Really, you should probably break this up into multiple statements with different sprintfs and whatnot. But as you can see, we can already just print like this. This string is more palatable, I would say, than that big long print line statement that couldn't even use floats within it. So now we go ahead, we need to put in the order of our format specifiers the variables that will be put into them. So we need to put in any kind of string, a float, and then a Boolean variable here. So it will go fave team. Next we have the float, so that's the fastest time. And then lastly we have will win championship, which I did not initialize correctly. Gotta make sure that's right. And we're good to go. So let's clear out the console, run this one more time, and we get my favorite team is the Detroit Lions, and their fastest wide receiver runs a 4.29 40. They will win a championship. Set that equal to true, basically. So there you have it. That's printf in a nutshell, and a little quick peek at what sprintf does for you. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this video. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.